Have you ever glanced at the fine print on a brochure and just completely ignored it? Well, we're about to dive into a real-life legal mystery that all started with a simple property pamphlet and ended up changing the game for Australian consumer law.
Okay, so picture this. You're a real estate agent. You just made a huge sale. But then, disaster strikes. The brochure you gave the buyer had a mistake in it, and now you're being sued. Could your entire career, your reputation, really all come down to one single sentence buried in that fine print? So yeah, our story kicks off with something we've all held in our hands. You know the type, a glossy real estate brochure with those beautiful photos and official-looking diagrams. But this one had a very expensive secret hiding inside. All right, let's get right into it. First up, let's talk about this brochure and who was involved in this whole mess. The case is Butcher v. Lachlan Elder Realty, and you've got three main characters here. A buyer, who's excited about a waterfront property, a real estate agent, who's working to make the sale happen, and of course, the brochure, which, as it turns out, had a survey diagram in it, and the diagram was just plain wrong. So the brochure showed what looked like a perfectly clear property boundary, and the buyer, naturally, relied on that. But the unfortunate reality? The actual property line was completely different. And this wasn't a small error. It was a huge deal that threw a wrench in their building plans and hit the property's value hard. With a mistake this big and this costly, the next question is pretty obvious, right? When a buyer gets misled like this, who has to pay for it? Now, under Australian consumer law, it is a massive no-no for a business to engage in misleading conduct. So the buyer argued, pretty logically, that the agent giving them a faulty brochure was exactly that. Seems like a slam-dunk case, right? Well, not so fast. The agent didn't just roll over and accept the blame. Instead, they came back with a really interesting defense that was basically all about just passing on information. Their whole position was, essentially, don't shoot the messenger. They claimed they never created that bad survey diagram. They said they got it directly from the property owner, the seller, and all they did was pop it into their marketing materials. They were just the middleman. And their star piece of evidence, it was that little disclaimer tucked away in the brochure. It said something like, "We got this information from sources we think are reliable, but we can't guarantee it's accurate." And believe it or not, this one sentence became the absolute center of the entire legal battle. This whole "I'm just the messenger" defense, the one that relies on a disclaimer for protection, well, it actually has a proper legal name. It's called the Mere Conduit Principle. And this wasn't some small-time dispute. No, this case went all the way to the High Court of Australia, the highest court in the entire country. You can bet the entire real estate world was watching, just waiting to see which way the judges would lean. Okay, so to really get what the court decided, we first need to get our heads around this key term. What exactly is a mere conduit? Think of it like a pipeline for information. A mere conduit is just that, a channel. They get information from one source and pass it along to someone else. They don't change it, and, this is the most important part, they don't stamp it with their own seal of approval or present it as their own expert knowledge. So here's how the High Court saw it. First, they recognized that the agent didn't actually create the bad diagram. Second, they pointed right to that disclaimer, which told everyone they weren't guaranteeing anything. And third, the agent never once said, "Hey, as an expert, I'm telling you this is correct." So the verdict came in. The High Court actually agreed with the agent. They ruled that because the agent acted as a mere conduit and used that clear disclaimer, they were not guilty of misleading conduct. That fine print, it actually worked. But hold on. Before you think this is some kind of magical get-out-of-jail-free card for businesses, it's not. This principle is not a bulletproof shield. There's a really important exception. So let's look at when these kinds of disclaimers totally fall apart. See, that mere conduit defense just vanishes into thin air the second you stop being a passive messenger and you start actively adopting or endorsing the information. The moment you present it as your own or you vouch for it, then guess what? The responsibility lands squarely back on your shoulders. So let's put it side by side. The defense works when you're just relaying information and you've got that clear disclaimer. You're just a messenger. But it fails miserably if you adopt the information, if you vouch for it or you present it as if it's your own expert analysis. The line in the sand is the difference between here's what I was given and here's what I'm telling you is true.
All right, so what's the bottom line here? For businesses, a solid disclaimer can be an incredibly powerful shield. But it's not just about the words, it's about how you present the information. You have to be super clear about your sources. And for the rest of us, the lesson is an old one, but it's truer than ever. You really, really gotta read the fine print.
And this whole mere conduit idea isn't just for real estate law. It applies to pretty much any situation where a business is passing on info from somebody else. So now that you know the rule, now that you know the difference between being a messenger and being a source, the real question is, where are you going to spot it next? In an ad, a news story, the next contract you sign? Once you know what to look for, you'll start seeing it everywhere.